There is so much suffering in the world. The media is constantly reporting on the suffering of individuals, both in the UK and overseas. The reports touch the hearts of us all. This has led some to question the existence of God on the basis that if there is an all-powerful God, then he would have already put an end to suffering. The Bible is the Word of God, and for a few moments we're going to look at what the Bible has to say about suffering. The media reports of the impact of coronavirus have highlighted the suffering that it brings. With current estimates that there have been over 10 million confirmed cases and 500,000 deaths, the extent of the suffering is enormous. Why does such suffering happen when God tells us that he is a God of love? We first need to look at why suffering came into the world. At the very beginning, the Bible shows that pain and suffering is a curse imposed by God due to the disobedience of his commands. If man had done what God had commanded him to, the curse would not have been imposed. The commandment was important, as it was through obedience that God in his wisdom planned that man would develop perfect characters. The disciples of Jesus asked him about the problem of suffering. They had heard that men who lived in the same part of Israel as their own families had been slaughtered by the current ruler. Jesus referred them to another terrible event of when a tower that formed part of the wall of Jerusalem had collapsed, killing those on whom it fell. Although Jesus would have had the utmost sympathy with the people who had been killed in these ways and with their families, and may have said more that is not recorded for us, what is recorded is important. He warned the disciples that just as Adam and Eve were cursed as a consequence of their own disobedience, so too all men should take such incidents of suffering as a warning to be obedient to God's commands. When it came to suffering, Jesus suffered more than any man in the cruel death that he endured on the cross. It is accepted that crucifixion is one of the most painful deaths imaginable, yet Jesus suffered that pain after living a perfect life. The Bible shows that for believers, suffering can be the way in which our own characters are being molded into those which God requires, as it was for Jesus. Jesus was God's own son, and God would have shared the pain that his own son experienced. This shows the extent of God's love as all this was done, that all believers might be forgiven their own sins. When we see such suffering in the world, we accept that it is part of God's purpose and that he is truly a God of love. The greatness of his love is seen in the wonderful visions that he gives of a coming world that will be free of all pain and suffering. To learn more about what the Bible has to say about suffering, click on the link in the Facebook post and read an interesting booklet on the problem of suffering. This is free and without obligation. No one will contact you, but if you would like to learn more about the Bible, please message us using the link on the Facebook page.